They terminated my contract without notice. Those words echoed across the polished conference table, delivered with the casual authority of someone who had never once set foot on a factory floor. Olivia Mathos, the newly appointed Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Automotive Parts, didn't even glance up from her tablet as she spoke. She was in her 30s, sharp in a tailored blazer, radiating the air of a McKinsey consultant. She scrolled through spreadsheets, a red stylus in her hand, circling expense line items as if they were personal enemies. I am Harold Peterson. I am 49 years old, and for the past 28 years, I have been building manufacturing systems that actually work. Not systems that look pretty in PowerPoint presentations, but systems that keep 2,400 people employed and ensure $180 million in orders flow seamlessly through 12 plants across 4 states. I sat there, hands resting on the table, watching her perform what she clearly believed was decisive leadership. The transition will be immediate, she continued, still not meeting my gaze. We are bringing systems management in-house. It's more efficient and provides better cost control. Behind her sat 2 individuals I'd never seen before. A nervous woman from HR, clutching her own tablet, and a young man in an expensive suit that screamed consultant. Not a soul from operations. Not one person who had ever stepped onto a production floor. Just Olivia and her imported expertise. Finally, she lifted her eyes, her expression a blend of boredom and irritation, as if my continued existence was an inconvenience. Before you leave, she said, tapping her stylus on the tablet, we need the entire smart factory system, access credentials, source code, documentation. We need everything by the end of the business day. Silence descended. The HR woman fidgeted. The consultant stopped typing. I didn't move, merely sat with a neutral expression, allowing the quiet to stretch. Olivia's eyebrow arched slightly. What is the issue? I smiled. The kind of smile you give someone when you know something they don't. I'm afraid I can't do that. Her stylus froze halfway to the screen. I beg your pardon? The system, I continued, my voice steady and professional. You can't just take it? Olivia's confident posture shifted almost imperceptibly. A flicker of confusion crossed her face before the corporate mask snapped back into place. We paid for the development. That makes it company property. I slowly shook my head. You paid for operational access, not ownership. That distinction is clearly outlined in Section 7 of your service agreement. The consultant leaned forward, whispering something to Olivia. She waved him away, her eyes still locked on mine. That's absurd. You can't hold company infrastructure hostage. I'm not holding anything hostage, I replied. I'm simply clarifying what you legally control, which at this moment is absolutely nothing. What Olivia Mathos didn't know, what her consultant, her HR team, and her entire cost optimization plan had completely overlooked, was that the smart factory management system underpinning all of Sterling's operations wasn't software residing on their servers. It was a bespoke infrastructure that I personally owned, licensed to them for use, and managed from hardware they had never seen. And when they terminated my contract 3 minutes ago, they had effectively disconnected themselves from the only thing keeping their production network from collapsing. In 48 hours, this oversight would cost them everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind and show you how a 28-year veteran manufacturing systems engineer from Ford Motor Company was summarily dismissed by someone who thought factory automation was simply an app on a dashboard. I started at Ford right out of college, back when American manufacturing still meant something. I spent 8 years on the shop floor before transitioning into systems integration. I learned early on that manufacturing isn't about dashboards and data visualization. It's about understanding how physical machinery interacts with real-time control systems under actual load. When Ford began its efficiency drive in 2018, I saw the writing on the wall. I watched 800 good people lose their jobs because some consultant convinced management they could run the same production with half the workforce. That's when I went independent. I built my first custom ERP integration in 2019 for a Tier 2 supplier in AgIO. Word quietly spread through the industry. A reputation like that brings calls when someone's production is falling apart and off-the-shelf solutions have failed. I don't have a fancy LinkedIn profile. I don't post about Industry 4.0 synergies or digital transformation pathways. My clients find me when their systems are broken, and their MBA-wielding consultants have no clue how to fix them. That's how I ended up at Sterling Automotive Parts 5 years ago. George Whitman, their then vice president of operations, called me on a Thursday afternoon. His voice carried the strain of a man staring into the abyss. "Hal," he said, "we just failed our third quality audit in 6 months. Our OEM contracts are on the verge of cancellation. I need someone who understands how this actually works, not another consultant who studied manufacturing through case studies." George was old school, having worked his way up from the ground floor, spending years managing production before moving into leadership. He understood that behind every clean dashboard and automated report was physical equipment that needed to function flawlessly. When I walked into their main plant that first day, the chaos was immediately apparent. Production lines started and stopped with no discernible coordination. Quality control was flying blind because their vision systems couldn't talk to the assembly robots. Preventative maintenance alerts went nowhere because no one knew how to interpret the data. "We have 7 different software platforms that don't talk to each other," George explained, guiding me through the shop floor. "Assembly uses one system, quality control uses another. Maintenance scheduling is largely manual. We lose 2 hours every shift just trying to synchronize operations." The next 18 months, I spent building them a real system, not some off-the-shelf package that vaguely works if you bend your entire operation around it. Custom control algorithms that learned the specific rhythms of their 12 plants. Preventative maintenance that actually predicted failures before they happened. Real-time quality monitoring that caught defects at the source, not at final inspection. 18,000 lines of code. Every algorithm, every database structure, every hardware interface was built from the ground up and tested until it ran without a hitch. The results were immediate and measurable. 0 unplanned downtime. Scrap rates plummeted from 2.3% to 0.8%. Overall equipment effectiveness numbers had their OEM clients singing their praises. George sent me detailed quarterly reports. Not corporate thank you letters, but substantive analyses of efficiency gains and cost reductions. The contract was crystal clear, a lesson I'd learned the hard way years ago. They licensed operational access to my system. I retained full ownership of all source code, algorithms, and infrastructure. George signed without hesitation because he understood the difference between using something and owning it. For 5 years, everything ran perfectly. Monthly payments arrived on schedule. The system functioned exactly as intended. George would occasionally call with questions about scaling up or integrating new equipment, always respecting the boundaries we had established. Then George retired. Olivia Mathos appeared 3 weeks later, with her Stanford MBA and a tablet that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payment. Her first communication wasn't a greeting or an introduction, but an email subject line: third-party vendor cost analysis. The email was written in the clean language of corporate optimization, discussing recurring expenditure structures and de-risking dependencies. My invoice hadn't changed in 5 years. The same amount, the same payment schedule, the same scope of work. But Olivia saw a line item on a budget sheet and immediately decided there was something to trim. I responded professionally, attaching the original contract and a summary of the system's performance metrics over the past 60 months. Her reply came within 2 hours. Need to schedule a comprehensive review of all external service dependencies. Please prepare full documentation for internal assessment of operational systems. Operational systems. That phrase told me everything I needed to know about Olivia Mathos. She was the type who believed a complex manufacturing infrastructure could be understood by swiping through presentation slides and reading executive summaries. 4 days later, an email arrived confirming my suspicions. Subject: System Architecture Documentation Request. Olivia wanted a complete copy of the system for internal evaluation and potential transition planning. She didn't want to renegotiate our service agreement. She wanted to take my system and eliminate the monthly payments. I sent a reply that was technically accurate and deliberately unhelpful. Happy to provide all materials included within your current operational license. Then I retreated to my garage workshop, sat down at the main control panel I had built specifically for the Sterling system, and began preparing Olivia Mathos a lesson on the difference between access and ownership. 3 days after my documentation reply, another email arrived. Subject: Intellectual property rights clarification. Olivia wanted written confirmation that all of the operational software logic belonged to Sterling Automotive Parts. Operational software logic. That's what she called 5 years of building custom manufacturing algorithms, preventative maintenance protocols, and real-time coordination mechanisms, as if it were a commodity asset she could inventory and reallocate. I took a screenshot of the relevant contract clause and replied with it. Bold text, impossible to misinterpret. All system architecture, source code, design logic, and operational infrastructure remain the exclusive property of Harold Peterson, licensed solely for operational use. No transfer, copying, or derivative works are permitted without express written consent. George Whitman had perfectly understood this clause when he signed it 5 years ago. You don't buy a custom manufacturing system like you buy office equipment. You license access to an infrastructure that took years to develop and requires ongoing maintenance from the person who built it. Olivia's reply came 6 hours later. We are moving to in-house systems management. Effective immediately, final payment will be processed in accordance with contract terms. Thank you for your service. That was it. No discussion, no transition planning, no acknowledgement that she was about to disconnect the central nervous system of a 12-plant manufacturing process. Just corporate jargon that meant, you're fired, and we're taking your work. I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at that email. Then I walked out to my workshop. Inside this converted 2-car garage sat the physical control infrastructure I had built specifically for Sterling's networks. Custom hardware interfaces with dedicated circuits for each major subsystem. Production coordination, quality monitoring, preventative maintenance, equipment synchronization. All of it ran through boards I had assembled and programmed by hand. Olivia Mathos had no idea this control panel existed. She thought the system was software running on Sterling's servers. She was about to learn the difference between a user interface and actual operational control. 6 days after her termination email, a calendar invite appeared. Systems Transition Meeting, Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. No agenda, no context, just a meeting title implying she expected a simple handover conversation. I joined the video call 3 minutes early. Professional appearance, crisp button-down shirt. In the background, my home office, with engineering certifications and 28 years of Ford Service Awards hanging on the wall. Olivia joined 2 minutes late, settling into her chair with the smug satisfaction of someone who thought they had solved a complex problem with simple cost-cutting. A man from the IT department, Brad Coleman, judging by his screen name, joined next. Then a woman who looked like she'd just graduated business school, tablet in hand, ready to take notes. George Whitman was not on the call. Unsurprising. He had likely advised against this entire approach, and Olivia had decided his operational experience was irrelevant to modern business strategy. "Harold, thank you for joining," Olivia began, her tone implying this was a routine administrative matter. "We've made the decision to bring systems management in-house. We appreciate all your work to date, but we're ready to assume direct operational control." Assume control, as if navigating dashboards was the same as managing underlying infrastructure. I maintained a neutral expression. "You're terminating the license agreement, correct?" Olivia said, leaning back as if expecting praise for her decisive leadership. "We will require a full handover of all code repositories, system architecture documents, and back-end credentials. Standard transition process." Brad nodded in agreement. The secretary typed something on her tablet. They had this all staged like a routine vendor management exercise. "You do not have a license to access the underlying infrastructure," I stated calmly. "Your agreement covers operational use of the system's output. You never purchased ownership." Olivia's confident smile faltered slightly. "We paid for the development of this system, Harold. That makes it company intellectual property. That's standard business practice." "You paid for operational access to a functioning manufacturing network," I replied. "You never purchased the underlying technology. That distinction is clearly outlined in Section 7 of your contract." She looked away from the camera, likely opening the contract on another screen. I waited as she perused the wording George Whitman had meticulously reviewed with their legal team 5 years ago. "Look," she said, trying to regain control. "We understand there may be some technical nuances here, but going forward, we are prepared to manage operations internally. Just provide any documentation you have so we can ensure service continuity." "I will provide everything you are legally entitled to," I said. "Nothing more." The silence during the video call was stark. Brad looked uncomfortable. The secretary stopped typing. Olivia's jaw tightened as she realized this was not going to be the smooth asset transfer she had planned. "That will be sufficient," she said dryly, attempting to rush the call to a close. "We expect full handover by end of business day." I didn't respond, merely sat and looked directly into the camera as she fumbled with her mouse, clearly wanting to disconnect before I could further complicate her schedule. The screen went black. I closed my laptop. Olivia Mathos thought she understood manufacturing, because she could navigate software interfaces and review quarterly performance reports. She had zero understanding of physical infrastructure, custom hardware, dedicated communication protocols, or the specialized knowledge required to keep it all running. She was about to receive a very expensive education. I walked out to my workshop and powered on the control panel. Every indicator light glowed green. Production lines were synchronized across 12 plants. Quality metrics updated in real time. Preventative maintenance algorithms ran flawlessly on 89 stations. Sterling's entire production network was running exactly as I had designed it. Then, I began assembling the transition package for Olivia. A professional-looking documentation set, complete with neat diagrams and impressive technical jargon. Screenshots of the user interface, showing dashboard layouts and data visualization panels. All polished, official, and utterly useless without access to the underlying control systems. I spent 6 hours creating precisely the outcome Olivia expected. Visual materials that would make her believe she had received what she needed to operate independently. Mock-ups of interfaces with animated displays, system diagrams showing logical operational flow. All of it disconnected from the actual infrastructure. By 5:30 p.m., I had a comprehensive package ready. I attached it to an email with a single line. System interface documentation provided in accordance with contract termination. Infrastructure access is not included per licensing agreement. I hit send and watched the message disappear into Sterling's corporate email system, where Olivia would soon discover the difference between owning a dashboard and owning an engine. Then, I returned to my workshop, sat at the main control console, and placed my hand on the primary power relay. The real education was about to begin. The next morning, I drove to the Blue Ridge Diner, just like any other Friday. A small establishment off the highway. Good coffee, quiet corner booths for undisturbed work. Patricia Wells, the owner, had been serving me the same order for 3 years. Black coffee, no cream, wheat toast, scrambled eggs. She nodded as I entered, poured my coffee without question, and left me to my laptop. I opened the administrative console and brought up the main operations dashboard. Every indicator light glowed green. Production flowed smoothly across 89 synchronized stations in 12 plants. 950 machines received real-time coordination updates. Quality control systems passed through 28 inspection points effectively. Everything Olivia Mathos thought she now controlled was, in fact, running through custom hardware sitting in my garage workshop 20 minutes away. At 9:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from Olivia. Experiencing difficulties accessing root control interface. Please provide administrator credentials immediately. I stared at the message for approximately 15 seconds, then deleted it without replying. At 9:52 in the morning, I flipped the main relay switch. The control panel on my screen froze instantly. Every green indicator turned to gray. Real-time data streams plummeted to 0. Production synchronization halted mid-cycle. The entire Sterling production network simply stopped exchanging data. I took a slow sip of coffee and watched 5 years of flawless coordination die in absolute silence. The system didn't crash. It didn't issue error messages. I designed it to disengage gracefully. No alarms, no warning lights, no dramatic shutdown sequences. Just a clean separation from all operational control. If someone tried to restart the user interface, it would load perfectly and display the last cached data, creating the illusion that everything was still running. But beneath that facade, nothing was actually interacting with anything. For the first 20 minutes, with a cursory glance, nothing seemed amiss. The control panel displays still showed green status indicators. Foremen, looking at their screens, saw normal production figures and quality data. Assemblers, already at their stations, would have continued following their last received instructions, but new coordination data was going nowhere. I brought up live feeds from the plants I'd integrated into the monitoring system. At 10:14 a.m., I watched an assembly robot stand motionless at Station 7, awaiting a coordination signal that would never come. The conveyor belt further down the line continued to move, creating a bottleneck that would cascade through the entire system. At 10:23 a.m., 2 quality inspectors arrived at the same checkpoint. According to their handheld displays, both had valid assignments for the 12th inspection bay at the North Plant. The conflict avoidance algorithm was non-functional. By 10:35 a.m., the ripple effect was noticeable across the entire network. Production jams at 9 major stations, queues for quality checks forming at inspection points. Scheduling systems showed everything to be on time and synchronized, but the reality on the ground told a completely different story. I refreshed my inbox. Nothing yet. They were probably still trying to figure out why the route management system wasn't responding to login attempts. At 10:44 a.m., the first bewildered email arrived. Subject: Quick question, data sync delay. Hi, Harold. I'm seeing some strange delays in production updates. Can you take a look when you have a moment? Thanks, Mike Rodriguez. Mike was one of their senior foremen, a former sailor with good instincts. He'd figure out what was happening eventually, but right now, he was only seeing the symptoms. I didn't reply. By 10:58 a.m., emails were arriving every few minutes. Production data not updating, quality metrics frozen, multiple workers showing up at the same station. Still polite, still assuming it was some kind of technical glitch that a quick phone call could resolve. At 11:03 a.m., my phone rang. An unknown number with Sterling's area code. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call from a different number. Then a third. The panic was starting. I pulled up the system connection logs and watched as failed authentication requests hammered uselessly against the demo package Olivia's IT team had tried to use as a live infrastructure. Hundreds of failed connection attempts. Each request returned empty because there was no actual system behind the interface. They were trying to run a factory using nothing more than a photograph of a control room. By 11:25 a.m., the situation had escalated considerably. Production bottlenecks at 14 major choke points across 4 states. Quality control conflicts at 23 different inspection stations. Assembly schedules were running an average of 73 minutes behind across the entire network. And somewhere in the corporate office, Olivia Matthews was likely staring at user interface screens that still showed everything running normally and wondering why reality didn't match her data. At 11:32 a.m., an email with red priority flags arrived. Subject: Urgent, critical system failure, multiple operational conflicts. No response from coordination controls. Quality tasks completely desynchronized. This is impacting OEM contracts and delivery schedules. Need immediate support. Please reply ASAP. Brad Coleman, IT Director. The corporate politeness was cracking. They were starting to understand this wasn't a minor technical hiccup. I closed the email without reading the rest and checked the consequence calculator I'd embedded in my monitoring tools. A conservative estimate of $2.3 million in daily losses from production downtime, schedule slippage, and quality violations. The actual figure was probably higher when factoring in OEM penalties and contract breaches. My phone buzzed with a message from Olivia. "Emergency. Call me immediately." I deleted the message. At 11:46 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, caller ID showed Sterling's legal department. I declined the call and watched it reroute to voicemail. Then, another call from a blocked number, declined. By noon, I had 67 missed calls and 34 unread voicemails. The 12-plant production network was experiencing what Ford would call a cascading systems failure. Nothing was coordinating with anything. Assemblers were making decisions based on stale information. Foremen were issuing conflicting directions. Production supervisors were attempting to manually assign station schedules, while their computers insisted everything was running smoothly. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. Terms of engagement for emergency system recovery. Payment by wire transfer prior to reactivation. A rate 3 times the standard monthly service fee for immediate restoration. Duration, a 48-hour emergency window. Conditions, full acceptance of terms of service and intellectual property rights. I attached the document to an email addressed to Olivia Matthews, General Counsel and Director of Operations. Subject, Emergency Recovery Services Available. Then I hit send and ordered another cup of coffee. The learning phase was over. Now the negotiations began. At 12:53 p.m., a calendar invitation arrived. Emergency conference call at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Immediate response required. No polite preamble, no corporate pleasantries, just panic and all caps. I joined the call at 12:57 p.m. Professional appearance, calm demeanor. Seated in my home office. My engineering certifications visible in the background. The screen filled with tense executives at various stages of crisis management. Alan Brooks, some senior vice president, joined first, sleeves rolled up. The look of a man who had spent the last 3 hours in emergency meetings. Then the general counsel appeared. 2 attorneys. One scribbling notes rapidly, the other reviewing documents on a second monitor. Tony Martinez, a foreman I'd worked with during the initial rollout, appeared next. A former military man, like myself, who understood systems thinking. He looked haggard but unsurprised, as if he'd expected this conversation for weeks. Olivia Matthews was already on the call when I connected, tucked into a small window at the bottom of the screen. Microphone off, a tight body language that conveyed she had been sidelined from leading her own crisis. No one offered a greeting. Alan cleared his throat and got straight to damage control. "Harold, I appreciate you joining on such short notice. We've encountered what appears to be a significant operational disruption. Our entire network is essentially paralyzed, and we need to understand our options for immediate recovery." I nodded once. "Your service agreement was terminated yesterday. If you want to restore operational access, the terms are outlined in my emergency proposal." One of the attorneys leaned into her camera. "Harold, we've reviewed your proposal. Some of the financial terms appear disproportionate given the circumstances." "Emergency response rates," I replied. "Standard practice when critical infrastructure fails during business hours." Mike Rodriguez chimed in. His voice was tight with controlled stress. Harold, we have 12 plants offline. Production is stopped in 4 states. OEM contracts are accumulating penalties by the hour. He glanced at something off screen. 3 major clients have called, threatening to terminate contracts if we don't restore normal operations by Monday morning. Alan interjected again. Look, we understand there might have been some misunderstandings in the transition process, but we need to focus on solutions here. Can we discuss modifications to the emergency terms? No. The single word hung in the digital ether. No explanation, no negotiation, no corporate bullshit. Just a statement of fact. Olivia finally unmuted her microphone. This is unreasonable, Harold. You are holding our entire operation hostage over a contractual dispute. I looked directly into the camera. You rejected new services and demanded the transfer of infrastructure you never purchased. I provided exactly what you were entitled to under contract. No more, no less. She started to reply, but Alan cut her off with a sharp glance. One of the attorneys tried a different approach. Would you consider a modified payment structure? Perhaps installments over a period of time? Only wire transfer, full payment prior to reactivation. Mike leaned forward. Harold, what are the recovery timelines once payment clears? 30 minutes, I said. The system will be back online immediately once I confirm receipt of funds. Alan looked at his legal team, then back at the camera. We need 10 minutes for an internal discussion. Can you wait? I nodded. I'll be here. They retreated into a breakout room, leaving me alone on the line with Olivia's silent video square. She stared at the camera as if she wanted to say something, but wouldn't. I took a sip of coffee and checked my email. The emergency proposal had been forwarded at least 15 different times to various people within their organization. Finance, legal, operations, risk management, even their insurance carriers. Everyone trying to figure out how a routine vendor termination had become a company-threatening crisis. 8 minutes later, they returned to the main call. Alan's expression shifted from desperation to resignation. Legal is initiating the wire transfer now. It should clear within 30 minutes. Let me know when it hits my account. I said, 27 minutes later. My banking app chimed with an incoming transfer notification. Payment confirmed, amount correct. No complications. I walked into my workshop, sat down at the main control panel, and flipped the relay switch back to the active position. Every screen in my house lit up with green indicators. Production nodes reconnected sequentially. Quality algorithms resumed operation. Predictive maintenance came back online. Equipment synchronization updated in real time. The 12-plant production network sprang to life as if someone had just restarted the circulatory system of a massive industrial organism. I returned to the video call where they were still waiting. The system is operational, I announced. All services have been restored. Alan nodded. We appreciate the prompt response. I didn't make it prompt, I said evenly. I made it according to the terms you agreed to. No one replied. Olivia's camera was still on, but she hadn't uttered a word since her hostage comment. I left the call without ceremony. For the next 72 hours, I monitored system performance from my kitchen table. Everything ran flawlessly. Production synchronized perfectly. No quality conflicts, no coordination issues, no missed windows, and no communication from Sterling Automotive Parts. No emails, no phone calls, no requests for system modifications. They had learned to sit quietly. On Tuesday morning, a new email arrived from a different sender. Strategic partnership discussion. a proposal for revised terms from someone named Steve Davis, Vice President of Strategic Operations. Someone they'd brought in specifically to manage the fallout, with Olivia Matthews' name nowhere in the correspondence. The offer was substantial. A 5-year exclusive contract with increased compensation, priority consideration for future expansion projects, professional language, respectful tone, explicit acknowledgement of intellectual property rights. I read it twice, then opened a blank document and began composing my reply. New terms: stronger protections, ironclad ownership clauses, no room for future misunderstandings about who controlled what. 3 weeks later, a signed contract arrived in my inbox. Every clause was exactly as I had written it. No modifications, no negotiations, no corporate wordplay. Olivia Matthews' name was nowhere on the signature page. I closed my laptop and walked into my workshop. The control panel hummed quietly. All indicators were green. The 12-plant network ran seamlessly under my direction. Rumors in the manufacturing circles travel fast. By month's end, I received inquiry emails from companies in Detroit, Indianapolis, and Louisville, all asking variations of the same question. Are you available for systems development projects? I wasn't naive. They had heard what happened to Sterling. They knew what happened when someone tried to take custom infrastructure away from someone who understood the difference between using something and owning it. That reputation was worth more than any marketing campaign I could buy. I opened my laptop and started typing a new document. Standard Service Agreement for 2025. Harold Peterson Manufacturing Systems Consulting. The foundation was solid. It was time to build the next level. If you're listening to this and have ever built anything of value, remember this: protect what you create before you're forced to defend it. Read every contract, understand every clause, know the difference between licensing access and relinquishing ownership. And when someone tries to take what is yours, don't raise your voice, don't get emotional, just calmly smile and say, "I'm afraid I can't do that. It's not yours to take." And then watch them learn the difference between confidence and control. The next time some MBA consultant with 0 operational experience tries to tell you that 28 years of building things doesn't matter, remember Harold Peterson. Remember that experience has value. Remember that the people who actually make things work deserve respect. And remember that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting someone learn what happens when they bite off more than they can chew. Manufacturing is not an app. It's not a spreadsheet. It's not a dashboard that can be handed off to whoever offers the lowest bid. It's infrastructure. It's experience. It's years of understanding how things actually work, not how they look on a PowerPoint slide. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Experience isn't just years on the job. It's the wisdom to build systems so robust that even the people trying to steal them can't break them when you leave. True power isn't in owning the factory or signing the paychecks, but in being the only one who truly understands what keeps the lights on.